Okay, let me start by asking you this. What if I told you the WNBA might soon have a 7-foot, 280-pound center who once dunked on LeBron James? No, this isn't a joke. It's Enes Kanter Freedom, the former NBA first-round pick who's just declared for the 2027 WNBA draft. And before you say that's ridiculous, I challenge you to think about why this situation is way more fascinating than just a publicity stunt. Let's unpack this. Now, I'll admit, my first reaction was pure confusion. Enes Kanter? The guy who once called LeBron a coward on Twitter? The self-proclaimed human rights activist who got into political beefs with Nike and China. Suddenly he's saying, hey, I identify as a woman, so I'm qualified for the WNBA? At face value, it sounds like a satirical punchline. But here's what caught my attention. He's using the league's own rhetoric against them. Remember when Gabby Williams from the Golden State Valkyries said she'd welcome a trans athlete on my team anytime? Or when Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve doubled down on inclusion? Enes is basically saying, hold my orange WNBA sweatshirt. Let's test how serious you are. What many people don't realize is that this isn't just about Enes. He's highlighting a paradox that's been brewing in women's sports for years. On one hand, you've got progressive voices pushing for inclusion, arguing that self-identification should be the standard. On the other, you've got biological realities that make this a minefield. Take Lia Thomas, the swimmer who transitioned and dominated women's college events. Should we pretend that prior male puberty doesn't leave lasting advantages? Enes is forcing the WNBA to reconcile these contradictions. If they accept him, they're risking the integrity of the sport. If they reject him, they're contradicting their own principles. It's a lose-lose, and that's the point. Personally, I think the WNBA's silence on this issue has been deafening. For years, they've marketed themselves as a bastion of social justice, but where's the clarity on eligibility rules? Contrast this with the NCAA, which recently banned trans athletes from women's teams after the Idaho lawsuit. Suddenly the WNBA looks like the last holdout of performative wokeness. But here's the twist. Enes isn't even trying to mock anyone. He's weaponizing the language of inclusivity to expose what he sees as hypocrisy. In his words, if self-identification is enough, I meet every requirement. And honestly, he's not wrong. The league's own guidelines are so vague they could fit a tank through them. What this really suggests is that sports organizations are flying blind when it comes to policy. They're stuck between two cultural forces, a generation demanding inclusivity, and a reality that biology matters in athletics. The WNBA's dilemma isn't just about Enes, it's about whether they can survive as both a political platform and a competitive league. Imagine the 2027 draft. Teams either pick him to prove a point, or they all pass and face accusations of discrimination. Either way, the league's brand is going to take a hit. And let's not forget, this is happening while Trump's old joke about recruiting LeBron to the WNBA resurfaces. The irony is thicker than Enes's basketball instincts. A detail I find fascinating is how this mirrors the broader culture wars. It's not just about sports anymore. It's about who gets to define identity in a world that's increasingly rejecting binary labels. Enes, for all his theatrics, has created a Rorschach test for the WNBA. Will they be the guardians of fair play or the cheerleaders of ideological purity? And here's the kicker. If they fold and let him play, what's stopping 100 copycats from doing the same? Suddenly the WNBA becomes a circus. But if they draw a line, they'll have to admit their previous stance was flawed. Either way, the next 18 months are going to be brutal for their PR team. So here's my closing thought. Enes Kanter Freedom might be the most annoying basketball player of the 2010s, but right now, he's the smartest provocateur in the room. By turning the WNBA's values into a live grenade, he's forcing a conversation that's been long overdue. Whether you see him as a hero, a villain, or just a troll, one thing's certain: sports can't be politics-free zones. And in 2027, when all this plays out, we'll finally see what the WNBA values more: principles or winning. What do you think? Drop your take in the comments, because trust me, this isn't going away.